What if the most powerful man in the world wanted to give up? Not a soldier broken by war, not a peasant crushed by poverty, but a man with unlimited wealth, unlimited power, unlimited authority, the ruler of the greatest empire the world had ever seen. Marcus Aurelius had everything anyone could ever want. And yet, in his private journals, words he never intended the world to read, he confessed something that sounds shockingly familiar. He was tired, not just physically, tired of people, tired of the weight of existence, tired perhaps of life itself. Welcome back to Wisdom of the Stoics, the place where ancient philosophy meets the very real, very human struggles of modern life. Today, we're going somewhere deeply personal. We're sitting down, not with Marcus Aurelius the emperor, not with Marcus Aurelius the military commander, but with Marcus Aurelius the man who felt at times profoundly, painfully tired. And if you clicked on this video, there's a good chance you know that feeling too. Maybe you woke up this morning and the first thing you felt wasn't excitement. It was a dull, heavy weight. The kind where you stare at the ceiling and think, what is even the point of all this? Maybe you're exhausted by people who disappoint you, by goals that seem to recede the closer you get, by the relentless march of days that blur into one another, indistinguishable, unremarkable, by the sneaking suspicion that you've somehow ended up living a life that doesn't quite feel like yours. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are experiencing something Marcus Aurelius, arguably the greatest philosopher king who ever lived, experienced too. And he left behind in his private diaries something extraordinary, a roadmap, not just for surviving those moments, but for transforming them into something meaningful. Today we're going to walk through that roadmap together. This video is going to take you through 5 of the most powerful principles Marcus Aurelius wrote about when his own spirit was low. Each one builds on the last. Each one contains something you can carry with you when the weight of life becomes too heavy. If you've been feeling lost, hollow, or just unbearably tired, stay with me. Because what Marcus Aurelius discovered in his darkest moments may be exactly what you need to hear today. And before we dive in, if you haven't already, hit subscribe. This channel exists for exactly these conversations. Every week, we bring you the wisdom of the ancient Stoics delivered in a way that's real, personal, and immediately useful. You don't want to miss what's coming. Let's begin. To understand Marcus Aurelius's advice, you first have to understand what kind of life he was actually living, because it was nothing like the heroic legend. Marcus Aurelius was born in 121 AD into a wealthy Roman family. From early childhood, he was educated by the finest minds in the empire. He studied rhetoric, law, and above all, philosophy. He fell in love passionately and completely with Stoicism, with the idea that a good life required not wealth or power, but virtue, self-mastery, rationality. He never wanted to be emperor. This is important. He was adopted by the Emperor Antoninus Pius at age 17, not by his own ambition, but by the design of fate. He was handed a crown he hadn't asked for, and with it, responsibilities that would crush most men. For 19 years, he ruled the Roman Empire. And those 19 years were some of the most brutal in Roman history. Within months of taking the throne, a massive plague swept across the empire, the Antonine Plague. It would kill 5 million people. Cities became graveyards. Soldiers, administrators, entire communities wiped out. Then came the wars. Persistent, grinding wars on the northern frontiers, the Germanic tribes, the Marcomanni, campaigns that lasted for years and dragged him thousands of miles from Rome into muddy, freezing foreign lands. Then came the betrayals. His most trusted general, a man he considered a brother, staged a rebellion against him. And in the middle of all this, personal grief. He and his wife Faustina had at least 14 children. Most of them died young. The grief of a parent, burying child after child. This is a wound that doesn't close. He was managing an empire while drowning in personal loss, fighting wars while battling plague, trusting people who stabbed him in the back. And every night, or perhaps every morning before the world's demands consumed him, he wrote his private journal, the work we now call Meditations. never meant for publication, never meant for other eyes. Just a man alone with his thoughts, trying, desperately trying, to hold himself together. When you read Meditations knowing this context, something shifts. You stop reading it as the elegant philosophy of a serene philosopher king. You start reading it for what it truly is, the survival journal of a man under siege. And the very first thing that strikes you, the thing that should stop every tired, disillusioned person in their tracks, is this: he never stopped showing up. Not because he felt strong, not because life had become beautiful, but because he had found something more reliable than feeling: principle. Let's talk about what those principles were. Let me read you something. These are Marcus Aurelius' actual words from Meditations, Book 5. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work. As a human being, what do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm? Now, on the surface, that sounds like a motivational pep talk, but read it again. Look at the first line, when you have trouble getting out of bed. He wasn't writing this for some hypothetical lazy person. He was writing it to himself. This was a man who had to convince himself every single morning to get up, a man who lay in bed in the cold and felt the pull of nothingness. The greatest emperor in the world struggled to get out of bed. How many of you have felt that? That moment between sleep and waking where the weight of the day presses down before you've even opened your eyes. Where the gap between who you are and who you want to be feels unbridgeable. Let me tell you something important. That feeling is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that you are awake, truly awake, to the difficulty of being human. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Book 6, when another blames you or hates you, or people voice similar criticisms, go to their souls, penetrate inside them, and see what sort of people they are. You'll see that there's no need to be racked with anxiety, that they should hold any particular opinion about you. He's writing about anxiety, about the exhausting, gnawing worry of what people think. He felt it too. The Emperor of Rome, a man thousands feared and millions depended upon, was anxious about how he appeared to others. And in Book 9, one of the most quietly devastating passages in all of ancient literature, he writes, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." Simple sentence, enormous weight. Because embedded in that instruction is the confession that the temptation to break your word, to compromise your self-respect for an easier path, was real for him. He was fighting it every day. Here's what I want you to understand before we move into his advice. Marcus Aurelius was not a man who had transcended human weakness. He was a man who was intimately familiar with it and had developed a philosophy not to eliminate the struggle, but to make the struggle meaningful. That's the crucial difference. He wasn't trying to stop feeling tired. He was trying to find a reason to keep going despite the tiredness. And what he discovered, what he encoded in those private pages, is what we're going to explore now. Are you still with me? Drop a comment right now. Just tell me, on a scale of 1 to 10, how tired are you of life right now? Not as a measure of how broken you are, but as an honest starting point. Because I think you'll be surprised how many people watching this are right there with you. Principle number 1, stop fighting the river. Principle 1 from Marcus Aurelius. Accept what you cannot control, completely, not halfway. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Book 4, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Now I know what you're thinking. That's Stoicism 101. I've heard that 100 times. Stay with me, because there's a layer to this that most people completely miss. The exhaustion that comes from life, the deep, bone-level weariness, almost never comes from the hard things that happen to us. It comes from the war we wage against those things happening. Think about it. When you lose a job, you don't just feel the loss. You feel the resentment that it happened, the shame that it happened to you, the anxiety about what it means, the anger at the unfairness, the hours spent replaying what you could have done differently, the event itself. It happened in a moment. The suffering, that can last years. Marcus Aurelius describes this with an image that I find almost unbearably relatable. In Meditations, he writes about the mind as being like a sphere, naturally perfect, naturally round, and then he describes what happens when we refuse to accept what is. We become misshapen. The natural perfection of the mind gets distorted by our resistance. He uses the word obstacle many times throughout Meditations, and famously in Book 5, he writes what has become one of the most quoted sentences in all of philosophy. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. But here's the piece that gets lost in the Instagram quote culture. He is not telling you to be passive. He is not saying just accept your misery and do nothing. He is saying something far more radical. Stop fighting the fact that difficulty exists, and use every single ounce of energy you save from that futile battle, and point it at what you can do. When you stop fighting the river, you don't drown. You learn to swim with it. There's a concept the Stoics called amor fati, love of fate. Not tolerance of fate, not grudging acceptance of fate. Love, the idea that everything that happens to you, the grief, the failure, the betrayal, the loss, is not happening to you but for you, as material, as fuel. Marcus Aurelius's plague, his wars, his dead children in Meditations. He never rails against them. He writes around them, through them, using them as the friction that sharpened his thinking. Here is your first practice, drawn directly from Meditations. Tonight, before you sleep, take one thing in your life that is causing you suffering, one thing you cannot change. Write it down, and then write these words beneath it. This is the material I have been given. What do I build with it? Not, why is this happening to me? Not, when will this end? But what do I build? That shift from victim to craftsman is the first move Marcus Aurelius prescribes, and it doesn't make the pain disappear. It makes the pain purposeful, and purposeful pain is something a human being can endure. Principle number 2, the smallness that sets you free. Principle 2, embrace your smallness as liberation, not defeat. This one is counterintuitive. In a world obsessed with significance, with building a personal brand, with leaving a legacy, with being remembered, Marcus Aurelius offers something almost scandalous. He tells you to get small. In Book 6 he writes, how many a Chrysippus, how many a Socrates, how many an Epictetus have time swallowed up already? He's listing the greatest minds in history, people who wrote volumes of philosophy, who changed civilizations, who were celebrated in their own time and for centuries after. And he's saying, time swallowed them. Time will swallow you. Time will swallow him. The emperor, the philosopher king, the man writing those very words. Now, you might expect this realization to be crushing. And for many people it is. The existential weight of insignificance is one of the primary causes of what we now call existential depression. But Marcus Aurelius does something extraordinary with this thought. He uses it as medicine, because here's the liberating flip side. If none of this is ultimately permanent, if even the greatest lives vanish into the vast ocean of time, then the stakes of your specific failures are not nearly as catastrophic as your anxious mind has made them. That presentation you bombed, the relationship that ended, the career detour, the humiliation that still makes you cringe at 2 a.m. Time will swallow it, not as a reason to be nihilistic, but as a reason to breathe, to let go of the impossible weight of mattering forever, to simply be here, to do good here, to love here. In this specific, unrepeatable moment, Marcus Aurelius writes in Book 3, confine yourself to the present, not as a platitude, as a survival strategy, because the past is a room you cannot re-enter, and the future is a door that doesn't yet exist. The only place where life is actually happening, or where you can actually do anything, is now. There's something the Stoics called the view from above. Marcus Aurelius would sometimes direct himself to mentally zoom out, to see his own life from the perspective of the vast cosmos, to see Rome as a small city on a small planet, to see his problems as small threads in an enormous, indifferent tapestry. And rather than making him feel meaningless, it brought him peace. Because when you realize your problems are small relative to the universe, it also means your capacity for joy is not diminished by those problems. the pleasure of a meal, the warmth of a friendship, the beauty of a dawn, these remain real even when the larger picture is bleak. Your second practice. The next time anxiety about your significance grips you, find the highest window in your home, or go outside and look at the sky. Give yourself 1 minute to imagine your life as seen from the moon. Your city, your street, your house. You inside it, anxious about something. Then come back down and notice how much lighter you feel. That's Marcus Aurelius. That's the view from above. Principle number 3, other people are not the enemy. Principle 3, other people will always disappoint you, and that is not their fault. This may be the principle that Marcus Aurelius returns to most obsessively throughout meditations. Page after page after page, he writes about the problem of other people. And if you're tired of life, I'd bet a significant portion of that tiredness has a face, or several faces. The colleague who takes credit for your work, the friend who only calls when they need something, the family member who makes every gathering feel like a war zone. The world at large, which seems increasingly populated by people who are petty, selfish, dishonest, or just willfully unkind. Marcus Aurelius begins Book 2 with these words. Begin the morning by saying to yourself, I shall meet with meddling, ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, and unsociable persons. He literally starts his day by expecting the worst from people, not because he was a cynic, but because he had thought very carefully about why people behave badly, and his conclusion completely changed how he dealt with it. In Book 9 he writes, people exist for one another. You can instruct or endure them. And in Book 7, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. Related to my own. That phrase, sit with it for a moment. The person who betrayed you, they have a nature related to yours. They feel fear. They feel shame. They want to be loved and seen and respected. They make terrible choices under the weight of those wants, just as you have. Just as I have. Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic, but he was not a robot. He didn't pretend betrayal didn't sting. He felt it deeply. We can read it between the lines of Meditations. But he refused to allow other people's smallness to determine the size of his own spirit. He writes, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury, not to scheme, not to retaliate, not to build a wall around your heart so thick that nothing and no one can ever reach you again, but to be unlike the person who hurt you. To continue to be open and honest and kind, not naively but deliberately, as an act of defiance. Here's a truth that took me a long time to accept, and that Marcus Aurelius seems to have lived by. The people who exhaust you the most are usually the ones who need the most grace, not because they deserve it in any simple sense, but because their inability to give grace to others is already its own punishment. You don't have to be their teacher. You don't have to keep yourself in harm's way, but you also don't have to carry the poison of bitterness. Because that poison, Marcus Aurelius is very clear about this, does not harm them. It harms only you. Your third practice. Think of one person who has disappointed you recently. Instead of the story you tell yourself about what they did, spend 30 seconds thinking about what fear or pain might have driven them to act that way. You don't have to forgive them. You don't have to call them. Just extend 1 moment of understanding. You might be surprised how much lighter you feel afterward. Principle number 4, the duty that saves you. Principle 4, find your duty, and it will find you a reason to live. This is the one that perhaps strikes the deepest chord for people who are truly, profoundly tired. Not just tired of people or tired of failure, but tired in that way that makes you question whether any of it is worth it. Marcus Aurelius addresses this directly, and his answer is not an appeal to happiness. It's an appeal to function. In Book 6, confine yourself to the present. If you do the thing at hand vigorously, using your whole soul and giving it no other thought except how to best accomplish it, you will live happily. The thing at hand, not the grand vision, not the legacy, not the purpose that will make your name immortal. The thing at hand, Marcus Aurelius was not a man who believed in waiting to feel inspired before showing up. He believed in showing up, specifically, carefully, attentively, and letting the inspiration emerge from the work itself. He writes in Book 5, "A man's life is a mere moment, his existence a flux, his perception clouded, his body's composition corruptible. Streams of being, time an ever-rolling stream. Faced with all of that impermanence, what does he choose? To do his job, to serve his people, to be in each moment what the moment required of him. This is not resignation. This is the deepest form of engagement." There's a remarkable passage in Book 8 where he writes, "Do not indulge in dreams of the life you might have led, or cast your thoughts on what you could have been or might yet become. Instead, think of your duties and the present. Think of your duties and the present. Your duty might not look like ruling an empire. It might be raising your children well. It might be serving your customers with genuine care. It might be creating something beautiful or honest or true. It might simply be showing up for the people in your life with your whole heart. Whatever it is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything." Because here's what Marcus Aurelius discovered, and what psychologists and philosophers have confirmed again and again in the 2,000 years since. Meaning is not found, meaning is made. Not by grand gestures, but by showing up fully to the small and ordinary work of being human. I want to ask you something, and I really want you to sit with the question, what is the thing that only you can do in your specific life for the specific people around you? Not your dream career, not your fantasy life. The actual duty of your actual existence. The role that, if you abandoned it, would leave a gap that cannot quite be filled by anyone else. When you find that, and most of us, if we're honest, already know what it is, you find your reason. Principle number 5, the morning practice that changes everything. Principle 5, and perhaps the most practical one, begin again every single morning. This is the principle Marcus Aurelius built his entire life around. And it's the one that feels most radical in an age that rewards consistency, momentum, and the hustle culture myth of the person who never wavers. Because Marcus Aurelius wavered. He tells us so. He doubted. He felt the pull of comfort, of cynicism, of giving up. He recorded those feelings, raw and unedited, in meditations. And then, every morning, he began again, not from where he wanted to be, from where he was. He writes in Book 2, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He used the awareness of death, what the Stoics called memento mori. Remember you will die, not to be morbid, but to be awake. To treat each day not as a rehearsal, but as the thing itself. If today were your last day, not in the panicked sense, but in the awake sense, what would you stop tolerating? What would you say to the people who matter? What would you stop doing out of fear and start doing out of love? That question, asked honestly and regularly, is the engine of a meaningful life. But here's the part that makes Marcus Aurelius's approach so sustainable, so livable for ordinary humans. He didn't demand perfection. He demanded return. You don't have to be the Stoic sage every day. You don't have to feel inspired every morning. You don't have to have conquered your anxiety, your bitterness, your grief. You just have to, in his words, begin. And when you fail, and you will fail as he failed, as every human who has ever lived has failed, you begin again. Meditations itself is the evidence of this. It's not a record of triumph. It's a record of a man who returned, again and again and again, to the same principles, sometimes writing about them as if reminding himself for the first time. Sometimes writing as if tired of needing to be reminded, but always, always returning. That's the practice. That's the whole practice. You don't have to change your life today. You just have to begin it. Let me tell you what I believe Marcus Aurelius was ultimately doing in Meditations. He was writing letters to himself. Letters that said, in various forms, "You are not alone in this struggle. I know it is hard. I know you are tired. I know the world is disappointing and the days are long, and the weight is sometimes almost unbearable. But here you are, still here. And that matters." He never says, "Be happy." He never says, "Look on the bright side." He never minimizes. He sits in the difficulty with you, and then he hands you a tool, a practice, a way of seeing, because that's what philosophy actually is at its best. Not a way of thinking yourself out of pain, but a way of holding pain with enough grace that it doesn't destroy you. There's a passage near the end of Book 12, the final book of Meditations, that I find almost unbearably moving. He writes, "You have seen those things. Look also at these. Do not disturb yourself. Make yourself all simplicity. Does someone do wrong? It is to himself that he does the wrong. Has something happened to you? Good. All that happens had, from the beginning, been apportioned and spun for you out of the whole. In sum, your life is short. You must turn to profit the present by the aid of reason and justice. Your life is short. Turn to profit the present, not later, not when things get easier, not when you've figured it all out. Now, with what you have, from where you are. If you're tired of life today, I want you to hear Marcus Aurelius saying this directly to you. Across 2,000 years, I know I've been there, and here is what helped me. Not forever, just for today. Accept what you cannot change. Zoom out until your worries shrink. Extend grace to the people who exhaust you. Return to your duty, however small it seems, and begin again tomorrow morning, even if today was hard, especially if today was hard." We covered 5 principles today, all drawn directly from the private journals of a man who had every reason to give up and chose, every single day, not to. 1. Accept what you cannot control. Stop fighting the river. 2. Embrace your smallness. Let it be your liberation, not your defeat. 3. Understand other people, not to excuse them, but to free yourself from them. 4. Return to your duty. Let it be your anchor. 5. Begin again, every morning, without exception. These aren't just ancient ideas. They are survival tools for right now, today, in the specific life you are actually living. And here's my question for you, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. Which of these 5 principles do you need most right now? Which one hit the closest to home? Tell me. Not because I'm going to read every comment, though I will try, but because the act of naming what you need is itself the first step toward finding it. If this video helped you, even a little, please hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds, and it tells YouTube that this kind of content matters, which means it reaches more people who might need it. If you know someone who is struggling right now, someone who is going through a dark chapter, share this video with them. You don't need to say anything. Just send it. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for someone we love is hand them the words they couldn't find themselves. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now. Every week on this channel, we go deep into the Stoic tradition, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, and others, not as historical curiosities, but as living companions for the modern struggle. Because wisdom doesn't expire. It just waits for the moment you're ready to receive it. I'll see you in the next one.